Shalom.
Shalom to you, Al Tapper. Oh, welcome to the. Now, let me give you a proper introduction. So, that Al Tapper is a composer for the theater. Where are my notes? God damn it, here they are. His musical Imperfect Chemistry played at the Minetta Lane Theater a few years back, and with the playwright Tony Sportiello, he wrote a popular show called National Pastime, which is played all over the globe, including Mexico. It's so popular there, they dig it and they bring it back to Mexico. He also, and this is really wonderful, Al Tapper produced 2 documentaries for PBS TV, Broadway, The Golden Age, and, most importantly, Broadway musicals, A Jewish Legacy. So we have so much to talk about with Mr. Al Tapper, who's on the phone with us now. Shalom, Al!
Shalom, Rabbi. Listen, why aren't you in shul?
Why aren't I in shul?
Why aren't you in shul now? It's Shabbat.
Well, I'm kind of, I'm something of an apostate, because I hired an apostatute. I'm kidding. No, but you know, this is my synagogue. I can reach more people by doing this on Facebook than I can by just getting 3 or 4 people or trying to get a million, scrape up a million of 90-year-olds.
I understand it's tough to get a million these days.
It is. Now, how often do you go to shul?
Well, about 10 years ago, since I'd always gone, mostly on the high holidays, I decided that I wasn't going anymore.
And you were casting aspersions on me?
I didn't think my spirituality was enhanced by being in a temple. I believe in traditions and my Jewish culture, but as far as God is concerned, I'm a little bit unsure there's enough evidence to prove that there is one.
Oh my God! Oh boy! Not that I have proof. If I had proof, well, I'd be doing this way. I'd be in the middle of Times Square having him do miracles. I'm like, God, can you do me a favor? Can you turn this whole area here, the pedestrian thing with the bicycles, into a pool of blood? You dig it 2,000 years ago, you can do it again. Come on. How about some frogs? But no, we do things on faith. How religious were you growing up? Were you conservative? Were you, what were you?
I was from an Orthodox family.
Oh.
Mostly Lubavitch. I even met Rabbi Schneerson.
Oh, did he give you $1?
He gave me $1. Right.
Oh, what did you do with that $1?
He did give me. I still have the $1.
Oh, see, you're supposed to pass it. You're supposed to, yeah.
I know. I invested the $1. This was about 30 years ago, and now the $1 is worth about $20.
Oh,
so I owe Schneerson a lot.
Well, some people think he'll come back in some weird way, so you can pay him back then.
Yeah, some people say he never left.
No, he left. He left the building. He was in a hospital. He died. He's gone. Nice guy. Okay. Now,
Schneerson has not left the building. That's funny.
So, what is your Hebrew name?
Mordechai.
What?
Mordechai.
Mordechai. How did you get from Mordechai to Al?
Well, actually, my Yiddish name is Elchana Mordechai.
Oh, Elchana.
So Elchana, and I was named after my father's mother, whose name was Hannah. So her name was Hannah. So I became Elchana.
Because they want to make it male.
Because I was born with a penis, and she wasn't.
So, by the way, I don't know if this has been because you've done other interviews, I don't know if we've ever mentioned or it's ever been out that you have a penis. I've never read that about you.
I've kept it to myself all these years.
You've kept it, so you're not married?
No, I'm married.
Oh, you are? So I hope you haven't kept it.
I have 2 kids, 4 grandchildren. I am no longer married.
Oh, I'm sorry. But you were, and Mazel Tov on the kids.
I was married for a long time, 22 years.
What happens after 22 years that you suddenly said, I don't want to do this anymore?
I think I said, I can't do this anymore.
Fair enough. So are you out there? Are you using your penis on anybody else?
Yeah, I bring it out every once in a while, just for old time's sake.
You have to blow the dust off, or hopefully she blows the dust off it. But I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to say that. So, were you rolling it back? Let's start with theater. When was the first cast album that made an impression on you, or maybe you went to see a musical? What was it?
That's a really good question. When I was about 10, I used to go to bed at night with a Victrola. If you remember what a Victrola is,
tell people.
I would put the LPs of Oklahoma, My Fair Lady, and Carousel, and I would go to bed at night listening to those musicals.
Well, those wouldn't have been LPs. Those were 78s. They must have been.
Yes, those were LPs. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I had two goals. One was to play center field for the Red Sox, and the other was to write a Broadway musical. And that was something I wanted since I was about 10.
And so,
in fact, an interesting story about that is that I used to listen when I was to My Fair Lady a lot, and then when I finally saw the show, which was way after Rex Harrison, I thought the show was absolutely terrible.
Oh,
because it wasn't what I thought the song should be. Because I pictured how everyone would be directed in my head.
I hear you.
So when I saw it about 10 years later, of course, I loved it. I accepted it for how brilliant it was.
But that first time,
when you're listening to a show and you don't really know anything about the show, you use your own imagination as to what the songs mean.
Very true. Did you see the recent My Fair Lady at Lincoln Center? It was wonderful. It wasn't glorious.
I thought it was wonderful.
Yeah. So so you went to.
And it ended differently. If you know, did you see it?
Yes, or actually, my friend Dave, who hosts this program, he went to see it. And he told me all about it.
I met Dave. I think I was bar mitzvah with Dave.
That could have happened. But here's the deal, though. You went at the end of this My Fair Lady. He didn't know what the hell happened. Suddenly, she walks out into the audience.
I liked the ending. It was kind of a Me Too type of ending, where the woman says, "Look, I'm not going to get you your slippers. I'm out of here." And she walks out and she leaves. And that's, kind of a 2019 feel of what was a 1956 musical.
If that's what they were going for, then it makes sense. But when Dave saw it, she just sort of she left into the ozone.
They're going for from what I understand from the people that were involved in the production.
Cool. So how? Let's now talk about rolling it forward years later. You're starting to write musicals yourself. What was the first show that you ever wrote?
I wrote when I was 20. I wrote the musical for Boston University.
Oh my gosh!
And I got paid a total of $20.
It's more than I make doing my sermons. I'll tell you that.
$20 was a lot of money then.
What is the proudest of the songs that you wrote, of the show itself for Boston University? What's the thing that you look back on and say, well, most of it was probably crap. I was a kid. I was 20, but I did something real good in that part of the show.
I was only 20, but I felt that the show made a lot of sense, and it was about girls and boys not living in the same dormitories, because in those days you didn't.
Okay.
So if there was a song about the dean, it's called The Dean, and trying to argue with the dean about we should be living together, it's a different world today. It was a lovely ballad.
Oh, very cool. And by the way, I love the way you say argue. You're a beaner. You were born in Boston and et cetera?
Yeah. I was born in Worcester, but it's close enough.
Close enough. Don't argue with a rabbi, goddammit.
No, I know. It's a mistake. I should have learned that years ago.
What did you take in? But you were not a theater major at BU, were you? What did you do?
No, I was actually a business major.
Aha. And I'm sure you do not regret that, because you've done pretty well in business, yeah?
I don't regret it. I think it served me well and allowed me to do the things that I love doing now. And I've been doing them for 30 years. So So if I didn't have the first part of my life, I might not have had the second part.
Now, what were you doing? What was your business when you were in business?
I used to buy and sell companies, both paper, steel, plastics, financial services.
Whoa.
And by 1997, I sold the last company and did nothing else but write since.
What a wonderful life that is, my
yeah,
friend.
I was lucky. I really was lucky.
But were you sort of evil like that guy in Other People's Money, where you buy a company and then fire half the staff?
No, I don't think I was evil, but to be very honest, Rabbi, everybody does something they're not particularly proud of. And when you own the businesses and you have to make decisions that affect thousands of people, sometimes selfishness gets in the way and you make the wrong decision. But hopefully I made more correct ones than incorrect ones.
So now you're in the place where you've done the business, you've made a ton of money, I'm sure, and you're able to write. When did you start making that breakthrough towards getting off Broadway, beyond just writing musicals that get workshopped or a reading here and there, or nothing really happens?
During all the years that I was in business, I still wrote. And okay. I had songs that I used to work when I was 19, I worked at the Brill Building.
Wow.
With Don Kirshner, who was the producer.
Whoa, all right, stop right there. I didn't realize this. This is tell us some Don Kirshner stories.
Well, everybody had their own little cubicle.
Yeah.
Carol Klein, who became Carol King, Neil Sedaka, Neil Diamond. So we all had our little cubicles, and we'd write a song. We had a piano, and we write a song. We had an in and out basket. So you finish the song. If you were able to write music, actually literally write music, you do that. If not, you'd have a reel-to-reel tape and put it with the lyric, and you put it in the outbox, and then he'd come or somebody would come and take it. If they like it, they came back with a check in the inbox.
Now let me ask.
I mean, it wasn't a big check, but if they accepted the song, they gave you $100.
Wow!
And then of course you got royalties for. He got the publishing rights. You got the songwriting rights.
Oh, but here's the question: then, did any of your songs get covered by famous?
One song that called "You Are Mine," in which I still get royalties for an excessive amount of money, like for the last 50 years, probably about 80 cents a month. 35 cents every 3 months,
Still, who did it?
I get a bigger kick out of getting those royalties than I do out of selling my companies.
But here's the question then: if you had that job at the which sounds like a real slavish kind of place, but also a wonderful place, why leave that to go into the corporate world when you were 20? Wouldn't that have been a beautiful place for you to stay?
It would have been, yeah, and I wish I did, but in some ways I wish I did. But I was 22 when I was married, and by the time I was 24, I had 2 children, and unfortunately I had to make a living.
Yeah, there's that penis again of yours.
Yeah, I know.
Naughty penis.
It got in the way, and it prevented me from doing full-time what I want to do.
So, by the time, though, sorry. Continue.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that since you were still writing in those 20-something years in the corporate world, when you came out of that and were ready to write for real, how did you make that leap to getting into people who could make something happen with the shows? Well,
I'll give you an example of how the two worlds came together. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, I was buying a company from Mobil Oil. And I had to go to Canandaigua, New York, which was their headquarters.
Uh-huh.
And I was in the elevator with my executive vice president and 5 guys from Mobil. All of them were taller than me.
Okay.
And one of my songs started to play on Muzak.
Oh my gosh!
And nobody's particularly proud of Muzak, but my assistant said to me, well, they're playing one of your songs, and I just understood. I acted like no big deal. Yeah, I know. But the guys from Mobile went absolutely crazy. They couldn't believe that a guy that's there to buy a company also writes songs that they're now listening to in an elevator.
Well, that would be impressive too.
And I bought the company within 3 weeks.
Wow. At which point, all the music
they couldn't make sense out of it. They were Mobile Oil. They were all professional business guys who couldn't connect to the reality that a person who does this can also do this.
I know. People who see me as a rabbi realize they don't think I can also be a water skier. I can't, but it would be possible. So let me ask you, Al Tapper, though, when you did have a show in a major off-Broadway house, it was called Imperfect Chemistry about almost 2 decades ago. How did that happen?
Well, I wrote a show that started off something called This Is Eden, and it was about Adam and Eve lived on one side of the world, and the other side of the world were two people from New York, all at the same time.
Yeah.
And so, it ultimately turned into Imperfect Chemistry, and it was no longer Adam and Eve. It was two scientists who worked for a doctor who was essentially God, and influenced by the God's assistant, who was really the snake. And he said, look, you can have anything you want, everything is yours, but you can't touch the 800-meter Cranmore computer. Because if you do that, you're gonna be fired.
The tree of knowledge in computer form.
So, yeah, exactly. So that was basically the story, upgraded from creation, from Genesis to what's going on in the world today with computers.
Now, let me ask you a question about Imperfect Chemistry. So you were talking before how when you were a kid, you listened to these cast albums, you have an idea in your head how it should go, how the song should sound, and then you see it up on stage and you were angry almost. You were disappointed that it wasn't what was in your head. How was it with Imperfect Chemistry, which was a show you had in your head for years? It gets done. What did you think?
That's a good question. I thought it was great. I mean, the reviews turned out to be mixed.
Yeah.
Some were very good. I actually woke up the next morning after when the show opened and the Daily News gave it a rave review.
Oh.
So I thought, oh my God, I'm in great shape. And then the New York Times came out and they weren't crazy about it.
So you did read reviews. Do you care about reviews at all now?
I read them. There is an odd thing about that. I don't care what the reviewers say about me, because all I care about is doing the writing. I'm not even crazy about the mounting of the show. I just like writing it.
Wow.
So I don't mind. I don't like a bad review. Nobody likes a bad review. But I am a sucker for reviews. When a reviewer comes out with a show that I didn't write and they say it's the worst show in the world, I don't go. I believe in reviewers.
Okay.
I trust them.
Generally, the best thing is to trust consensus. If you have 5 reviewers reviewing the same show, and 3 of them hate it, and the 4th is like, meh, and the 5th one kind of likes it, you sort of know, they're not outliers.
Exactly, Rabbi.
Yeah.
And you know what? And as a result, I don't go, which is why I like to go to previews.
Oh, so you
because then I can make up my own mind.
So is there a show that you have seen, because I'm sure you're in New York, or you go to see a lot of shows on and off Broadway, is there a show that you loved over the past 5 years that bombed, that tanked, that got bad reviews, that audiences didn't go to, and you're just scratching your head saying, I loved it?
Actually, no.
Oh, okay.
No.
I don't always ask the best questions.
If I see a show and I don't like it, usually my instincts are pretty good, and I walk out saying, there's nothing memorable about it. When you walk out of a show, a brand new show, and you're whistling tunes from Oklahoma, then you know it wasn't such a good show. That's
a very good, or at least it wasn't a good score. The show might grab you and have a good book, and then be interesting. And the actors are, of course, talented. But sometimes, and this happens, I'll go see a perfectly good show, but the minute I'm out of the theater, a Sondheim song is in my head.
Yeah, that's right. The Sondheim is really a person who changed Broadway so significantly that everybody's tried to copy him. And the problem is there's only one Sondheim. And the others aren't as good, but they try to write the same way that Sondheim writes.
Well, is there an Al?
I write like Jerry Herman writes.
Oh, well, okay, so, but there's only one Jerry Herman too.
Yes. Yeah. But the music at least is melodic, and you can walk out, say, gee, that's a nice tune, I liked it. But when the music is so confusing, and you can't recall it when you leave the theater, you have nothing in your memory about what you just saw.
I hear you. Now, let's talk a little bit about the show that you did or are still doing with Tony Sportiello, who is a playwright. He wrote a baseball play about baseball called National Pastime. And you say, hey, that could be a musical. How did that turn into a musical?
Tony called. We had done sessions. I wrote sessions. I wrote the whole show. Tony had written a script about National Pastime that played at the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. And he said to me, this would be a perfect show for a musical. I said, well, let me read what you got. So he sent me the script, and I agreed with him, and we turned it into a musical. There's like 20 songs in the show,
right? And
it's played all over the United States, and it won the best show for I don't know if they call it Tony in Mexico, but it won whatever they call it, a Pedro or something like that. I don't know.
El Senor Antoinette. I'm not sure what they call it there either, but have you had any fun adventures in Mexico when your show has been doing? I mean,
I went to see sessions, and it was done translated completely into Spanish. So, and I don't speak a word of Spanish.
Right.
I have trouble enough with English, but I knew, since I wrote it, I knew where the funny lines were.
Right.
So they may have said them in Spanish, but I would say, I know what he's really saying, and I would laugh. And I got a great kick out of watching my show translated into Spanish. And the Spanish language is very mellifluous. And the music sounds even better in Spanish.
Are they playing Spanish guitars?
It wasn't arranged in any kind of Latino way.
Right.
It stayed very honest to exactly what I composed. But the language, what may take 2 words to say something in English takes 5 in Spanish.
Oh, it's so true. But they say them as fast as the English person would say 2 words. So,
and therefore you don't need rhymes. And yet you still got a wonderful mellifluous sound that has great harmonies.
Now, we're talking with Al Tapper, who is, as we've said, he's had all these different lives. He's had a life of a corporate arbitrageur, buyer-seller of companies. He has a life as a composer of off-Broadway and regional and international musicals. But then, somehow, how did you angle your way into doing 2 of the most beloved theater documentaries that we've had over the past couple of decades? You did Broadway, The Golden Age, and then, of course, Broadway musicals, A Jewish Legacy. How did that happen?
I also did, I just want to add, that I also did a movie on the life of Ted Williams.
Oh, baseball. We'll get to baseball.
And that's on Netflix right now.
Oh, okay.
But I will tell you about 95% of all Broadway musicals, music and lyrics, were written by Jews. And I couldn't understand why that was. And so I got together with 2 other people, and we sat around my apartment trying to figure out exactly what the point of the movie is going to be. Why did 95% of all Broadway musicals get written by Jews? Was it because they couldn't be plumbers, they couldn't be carpenters,
That's true.
And so they were welcomed into theater because if they wrote a tune, nobody gave a damn whether, what they did, as long as it was a good tune.
Mm.
So my reason was that Broadway music is Eastern European in its roots.
Yeah.
If you listen to great Russian composers, Polish composers, the melodic structure of those pieces are very much what Broadway is. What Broadway was in the days of up to Sondheim. And somebody else said, well, they really were accepted in the theater because nobody would accept them in anything else, and it was the turn of the century, and no dogs and no Jews and no Irish allowed, and all that racism that existed.
But it's one thing. It's one thing
we
too.
did the movie. We interviewed every composer that's still alive, and we interviewed it, like Gershwin's family and Richard Rodgers' daughter, Mary Rodgers, who recently passed away, and Frank Lutz's wife, and all the great composers and lyricists, and Jamie Bernstein and Leonard Bernstein's daughter.
So were you?
What we never ended up with, Rabbi, was that we never came up with the actual answer as to why Jews composed 95%. We just didn't have a reason. Couldn't come up with one.
Why is it that Jews compose only about 3% of rap? I don't know. I just but
I think that's high, by the way.
But in putting together a documentary, I mean, was it Rick McKay who did both of those films?
Rick McKay did the first one. Broadway,
the Golden Age.
The Golden Age.
Yeah, and then the second one. But you weren't the director, so your job was coordinating the trips. Meaning what?
Well, I picked the people who were involved in the production and get ready for financing. Found the director, found the choreographer or the editor, and all the people that relate to production.
Well, here's the question then. It's like a 90-minute documentary for public television. So you had to raise. I mean, public television doesn't pay. They didn't pay to make the documentary. I hope you got some money to be broadcast on there. But how do you raise money for that? This was before Kickstarter and stuff like that? Were there grant funding? What did you do?
I was fortunate to have the kindness of strangers.
So you just went to people So here's another question for you, Al.
I had friends in business who were good friends of mine who also were involved, or at least interested in theater.
Yeah.
And so you make a few phone calls and you get the money. Broadway, the Golden Age was the toughest. Broadway, the Jewish Legacy was easier because I had a hit with Broadway, the Golden Age, and so people say, yeah, that was good, we'll do it again. So, and then when I did the Ted Williams movie, it was the easiest one to raise the money for.
Because you had two in your track record, even though this was a different topic.
It's like having a hit song. If you have a hit song, all you need is one hit song.
Well, can I ask
you can almost do anything.
Ted Williams comes at least a decade after the others, I believe. So how much? If you don't mind saying, how much?
About 5 years.
Right, but how much did it cost to do the Ted Williams documentary? How much did you have to raise?
$750,000.
$750,000 for a full-length documentary in 2019. Sounds, I hate to say, it sounds pretty reasonable. Sounds like
Yeah, it is reasonable. But remember, it is a documentary, and you don't pay people for being interviewed. You might pay to have their hair done.
But you have to fly to where they live.
Expenses.
Yeah.
But they have a chance to be in a movie. They like the opportunity as much as we like the opportunity of asking them.
Right. But how does it go? How much is percentage-wise? Let's say
Broadway, the Jewish Legacy was $1.5 million.
Oh my! Well, but what are the costs? Where are the bulk of the costs? Is it
most of the costs come from archival footage.
Oh, you have to pay for that.
You got or the rights to use a song.
Right. Wow.
The Ted Williams one was less expensive because we didn't have we had archival footage, but my co-producer was Major League Baseball.
Oh.
So they gave us their archives for nothing.
Their blessing, of course. Oh, that's very, very nice. So, and Mazel, are you working, or do you think you'll do another documentary?
Well, I'm working on a new movie now about a novel that I written about 10 years ago, and when that's finished, the script is written.
Yeah.
We are now casting the show.
Do you need a rabbi?
We don't need, I haven't written a rabbi into it, but after this conversation, I think everybody can use a rabbi.
I do too. Show. Absolutely. Even the movie Doubt should have had a rabbi in it. Much better movie.
That's right.
Can I ask you though, Al Tapper?
Yeah.
You're doing all this fundraising and this stuff to make these documentaries wonderful, and you have your shows. Why, or did you ever invest or try and produce for Broadway or off Broadway?
I invested in a few shows on Broadway, but the last one was Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh, the Frank Wildhorn.
The only reason I invested in that is because one of the producers also gave me money for Broadway: The Jewish Legacy. So I felt it was tit for tat. So I invested in it, but it is a show that bombed. Universally bombed. And closed after a month.
Right, it bombed on Broadway, but when they do it elsewhere, do you still get like a chance? If they do it in, I don't know, the Alley Theater in Texas, so they end up doing it in California, or they do smaller productions.
If this show didn't get played, but yes, if you are a producer and you give money, then you negotiate with a lead producer that if the show goes on the road, then you get a percentage of the net, which it's in the accounting world and show business, it's very hard to determine what the net is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Movies too. I mean,
movies too.
They play fast and loose with. Well, no, that's
in the movies. I am the lead producer, so I make money every time it plays on Netflix or
nice.
Or wherever it might go.
So in other words, the money that you raise for the Ted Williams, that you will get back, and you will be able to pay the people who invested in it, as it were, in it. Yeah. Even they'll make a little profit from it because it's on Netflix, because etc.
Well, that is the plan. Whether it comes to pass or not, I don't know. It's Netflix paid $100,000 to have the right to show it for 2 years, and if it continues to do well, they'll pay more.
Oh.
So it's a long ride to recoup.
Yeah, because that's only 100 out of 7.
I didn't do any of these things to make money.
Wow.
I did them because they were my loves, and Ted Williams was my idol growing up.
Now, do you have baseball memorabilia? Are you a collector?
Yes, I do.
Not that I want people robbing your.
That, right?
No. Also, pictures of you that are on the interwebs. You can see behind you framed things and balls and stuff like that.
I have a one-of-a-kind collection, Rabbi, that most people, when they collect something, they collect one particular subject, like Yankee baseball. I don't. I collect one-of-a-kind things.
Like?
A lot of them happen to be sports. So I have the original home plate, Yankee Stadium in 1923, the one that Babe Ruth banged his bat on in Gehrig and DiMaggio. I also have the cleats that Ted Williams wore in his last at bat when he hit a home run and ended his career. I also have letters that are, for example, the first item I ever got in my collection was a letter that Jackie Kennedy wrote to Evelyn Lincoln, who was Jack Kennedy's secretary. And the letter, and I quote it exactly, is, "Dear Mrs. Lincoln, please, please, please don't show these bills to Jack. He hates it when I spend his money, and I promise I'll never do it again. Love, Jackie." So when you think of Jackie Kennedy, you think of elegance and beauty and sophistication. And here's a 33-year-old woman saying, "Don't show these bills to my husband. He hates it when I spend his money."
Do you think she was kidding, kind of? Was she?
No, absolutely not.
Wow.
Absolutely not. This was really real.
Wow.
And then I have a letter that says, "Dear Dad, I think show business is very difficult for me, and I'm really not sure I'm going to make it here in theater in New York. So I'm probably going to come home and we can open the hardware store in Ohio."
Harry Truman?
Your son, Clark.
What?
Clark Gable.
Oh my gosh! Whoa!
Yeah. So these are things that are one of a kind. They happen to be more sports related because sports have this aura that other things don't have. But I have a letter that Mario Puzo wrote to Marlon Brando that said, "Dear Mr. Brando, my name, you don't know me, but my name is Mario Puzo, and I just wrote a book called The Godfather. And it's beginning to have some success. And I think that if we could ever make it into a movie, you would be the perfect person to play the lead." Now, think about it. In the last 50 years, is there a movie that had more
well, no, I
don't know.
It's considered one of the great American
than The Godfather. It's quoted more than any other movie has ever quoted. And this letter was written before the movie was even thought of.
That's, oh my God. So I assume you have a very nice big house to keep all these things, or do you have to put them in a vault somewhere or
No, actually I have them in my apartment in New York, but I have them locked up. Did you ever hear, I don't know if you're old enough, Rabbi, but do you remember what's called the shocker around the world?
That's a baseball thing. That broke the Yankees' hearts or the Dodgers' hearts or something. What was it?
You got it. It was Bobby Thompson, who in 1951, in the playoff game between the Dodgers and the Giants, in the last of the ninth inning, the Dodgers were winning 4-2. Thompson hit a home run. The Giants win the pennant.
The Giants
win the pennant.
Yeah.
And I own the cap that Bobby Thompson wore on that attack.
Oh my God.
And if you see which is shown all the time, that Thompson's running from third base to home plate, and the ball players are running out the direction, his hat falls off. And in those days, you could run onto the field, so a guy picked it up.
And grabbed the cap.
He gave it to the Hall of Fame for about 30 years, and then he wanted it back because it was worth a lot of money, and he wanted to leave some money to his kids. So I bought it in auction.
Wow.
It's one of a kind.
Yeah.
If it relates to that, then that's my collection. The problem is most people don't have that eclectic collection. They have a collection that deals with one subject.
Right. But you like, obviously, theater and baseball and to some level movies. And
That's politics, theater, music, sports. I have one interesting thing that I think is extraordinarily valuable. And Knute Rockne, who was the coach of the Notre Dame football team, died in an airplane crash. And they couldn't find the plane. It was a private plane. And when it crashed, it took them about 4 or 5 days to find the plane. And there was Knute and the other 4 people in the plane. They were all dead. But Knute was lying on the ground with his right hand clenched. And inside his hand was his rosary beads and cross.
Don't tell me you have. Ugh.
I have that.
Why would you? Ew. First of all, you're a nice Jewish boy. Why would you want a rosary bead and cross?
Well, because Knute Rockne was probably the greatest football coach, considered the greatest football coach.
But that's rather ghoulish. I mean, shouldn't his family?
And the fact that he happened to be Catholic was of no interest to me whatsoever. Right. It was that he knew he was going to die, and he held on to the one thing that he thought might save him.
I don't know. All right.
So that's that's.
I get it.
To me, that felt honorable.
Well, it didn't really save him, did it?
Didn't save him.
No, it probably just made a very strong impression in his hand.
It's pretty hard to be saved when you're at 20,000 feet in the air on a plane that's crashed.
Yeah, that's. By the way, we're talking with Al Tapper, and I want to get back to arts and music and theater and stuff like that. And since we're talking about religion and Bible things, there's a show, or I might be an oratorio or something called The Seduction of Bathsheba. Something biblical. What is that?
That was I wrote a show called David back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And it was about King David. And we had a ballet. And it was an 18-minute ballet that I had composed the music for. And it was called The Seduction of Bathsheba, where David sees Bathsheba on the roof. And she's married to Uriah, who was one of his top military guys.
Mm-hmm.
And he falls in love with her. And he brings Uriah back. Because he knows that he's just made Bathsheba pregnant.
Oops.
And he tells Uriah, go and sleep with your wife. And he says, no, my lord, I cannot do that while the other soldiers are fighting for you. So David can't convince him to do it. So he sends a note to his chief of staff, and he says, put Uriah in the front lines. And of course he dies.
He dies.
And that is done in a form of a ballet.
Oh my God. That's another little fun
actually,
story.
The only thing that's left of that show is the ballet.
Oh, okay.
I still have a recording of it.
Oh my. So, okay, I'm just happy that you're doing some Jewy biblical things, not just in documentaries, but in actual writing and theater.
Well, in writing this, there's more written about David in the Old Testament than there is about any other character. Now, that may be because when the Old Testament was written by the scribes, David was alive and they wanted to please the king.
Oh,
but there is more. So there is so much richness in the story of David that it was fun to write.
Well, wait,
and I had to read the Old Testament first.
Well, I would hope so, but it's kind of funny that if David was alive while they were writing that,
yes,
and he allowed it to be in the book, because that's not a very flattering.
Well, he's the king.
Yeah.
It's good to be king.
You're right. You're absolutely right. We are feeling like kings of the world. We've been talking with Al Tapper here on Dave's Gone By. So a couple of last quick questions for you. First of all, what is the next thing that we can see from, we got the documentary on Jackie Robinson on Netflix, but not Jackie Robinson, who was it?
Ted Williams.
Ted Williams, I'm sorry.
There's two things. After the movie that is based on my novel, Tony and I are we've written a new show called Paparazzi, which is also playing in Mexico.
Oh.
And it will be playing in it's played in a couple of cities in the U.S., but it's never been in New York yet.
Ah.
So that's the next thing. And we're also working on a new show that is a little different. We don't even have a name for it yet, but it's about two guys who are gay.
Okay.
And the world of music of Broadway has changed, that only straight people can get their things produced. It's kind of the opposite.
The opposite of what's really going on, yes.
And so I've written the opening number, and the opening number that Tony and I talked about has to be the worst song ever written. A piece of real garbage.
Yeah.
So that the two guys who are watching this can say, that's the worst piece of garbage I've ever seen in my life. We can do better. And that's how the play starts.
Well, do you know that song?
And then they write this, and they realize that because they're gay, they can't get it produced. So they say, well, let's be straight. So they act as if they're straight so they can get things produced.
That's funny. That's
and then they find out that after they really learn how to be straight, that all the shows are being produced by women. So they say, okay, then we got to become women. So they
become women.
And then of course it ends up where women aren't doing it anymore, but only gays are.
That's right. So can you sing a little bit of this? Yeah.
It's a farce.
Well, I hope so.
And I've written the first song already.
Yeah.
It really is the worst piece of garbage I've ever written.
Can you sing a little bit of this bad, intentionally lousy song to open this unnamed show?
Well, let me think, because I'm terrible on the lyrics. But I live in New York City. You live in Bangor, Maine. How can anybody live in Bangor, Maine when New York is the coolest place to live? and you've got the meanest streets, and we've got the cleanest street, and and it goes on. And each verse doesn't make any more sense than the previous one.
Okay.
But it's so bad, Rabbi, that it's actually pretty good.
Well, that's the point. That's what Tootsie has the same gambit. If you go see the Broadway show Tootsie, they open with an intentionally generic Broadway show tune to show that it's a generic, ridiculous Broadway show that needs sprucing up. If you
did you like Tootsie?
I didn't see it. My friend Dave did. He thought it was very, very funny.
I haven't seen it yet.
It's
one that's on my list. I think I'd like to see it, but I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not rushing to.
Well, everybody should rush to find out more about Al Tapper. You can go to his website, amentertainment.com.
AMT Entertainment.
I'm sorry, AMT, my fault. AMT Entertainment. What's your middle name?
Martin.
Martin, there you go.
AMT. Where the Mordecai comes from.
Yay! So, Al Mordecai Tapper Entertainment, AMT Entertainment.com, to find out all about his shows, all about his career, all about his life. Before we let you go, one thing we also want to tell people is that you have written or even compiled some joke books, which I found out on the website. That's what I love. Nobody loves jokes more than I do. So what got you into compiling them?
I have a series of joke books. The first one was called The Guy Goes Into a Bar.
Yeah.
And all the jokes relate to that. And then the second one was called The Minister, a Priest, and a Rabbi. The third one was called A Guy Goes Into a Doctor's Office. And the fourth one is called Flunked.
Well, about school
with teachers.
Wow. How do you find that many jokes?
Actually, I dedicated, the interesting part of that book is I dedicate this book to my first grade teacher, Miss Kessler, who when asked if she could say one nice thing about Alvin as a student, she thought for a moment and said his brother was worse.
That's actually great. That's very good. That is good. Oh my gosh. So do me a favor.
Actually, I'm working on a Bible of jokes, which has the number of jokes that Methuselah lived to. I think it was 959.
Whoa!
And it's going to be written like a Bible, but funny.
Wow!
And not disrespectful in any way.
Well, no.
I don't like to write off-color jokes, so none of those are in there.
How do you find 950 clean jokes? I can't think of 10.
This was like a back burner, Rabbi. This was a back burner job, and I've been working on it for about 5 years. I'm in no rush to complete it. It's just something I'll end up doing at some point.
Well, can I ask you to leave us, Al Tapper, to finish off the segment? From, if you have it in your head, from your book, especially about the one the priest and the rabbi go into it, tell us your favorite or a favorite rabbi joke.
I'll give you my favorite. It's the one joke that I actually wrote, and I have to tell you this. If you're not Jewish, you're not going to get it. All right? You're not going to get it. I was at a party in my house. I have a home in Florida, and I had 20 people there. Half of them were Jewish, and half of them weren't Jewish. I said, I'm going to tell you a joke, and you're going to get it. You're not going to get it. You're going to get it. You're not going to get it. And I was right. And so the joke is this. It's high holidays. It's Yom Kippur. The rabbi is so filled with the moment, with the joy of the moment, that he gets on his knees and he looks up and he says, Lord, without you, I am nothing. And then the cantor, who doesn't want to be outdone, gets next to the rabbi, gets on his knees, looks up and says, Lord, without you, I am nothing. And all of a sudden, the guy from the 6th row, Shapiro, gets up, goes to the aisle, gets on his knees and says, Lord, without you, I am nothing. The rabbi pokes the kid and says, hey, look who thinks he's nothing.
Yes.
That's my favorite joke.
That's very Jewish. That's a classic, actually.
It is very Jewish.
Oh, it absolutely
is. Think of it. I've told that joke many times to my friends who are Gentiles, and they don't get it.
No. That's why they're
going. It is so Yiddish, you know. You have to have fun in that.
Well, It has been delightful doing up the Yiddish spirit with our new friend of the neighborhood, Al Tapper. Al, it just remains for me to thank you very, very much for spending.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
And we're going to let you
All
go.
right. Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too.
Shalom.
Bye-bye.
Al Tapper, my friends, Al Tapper in the neighborhood with us. I don't know if we have any music from the show. No, we don't. We're just, well, I have to go do something. I'm not sure what I have to do here. I gotta do something. Let me think. Well, I gotta divest so Dave can do more of his wonderful radio program of the stream. It's called Dave's Gone By. He's live. We're live. Just, if you count to 10 in Hebrew, by the time you get to 10, Dave will be back to do more of the program. I promise you. Do it.